have the model and I've been playing with it a little bit. How is it different, Sam? I'm not an expert at this, so yeah.
There's all these ways we can talk about, it's better at this metric, or it's, can do this amazing coding demo that the GPT-4 couldn't. But the thing that has been most striking for me is in ways that are both big and small, going back from GPT-5 to our previous generation model is just so painful. It's just like worse at everything. And I've taken for granted that there's a fluency and a depth of intelligence with GPT-5 that we haven't had in any previous model. It's an integrated model, so you don't have to like pick in our model switcher and know if you should use GPT-4o or O3 or O4 mini or any of the complicated things. It's just one thing that works. And it is like having PhD level experts in every field available to you 24/7, whatever.
How the world is changing by virtue of all that is changing in the world that you dominate. So the very first thing I want to start with is if I were a 25-year-old boy or girl living in Mumbai or Bangalore in India, I know you've said a bunch of times that colleges are not holding on to the place of relevance they might have had when I was growing up. But what do I do now? A, what do I study? If I'm starting a company, what kind of company do I start? Or if I were to even find a job, what industry do you think has some kind of tailwind? I'm not talking 10 years down the line, but even as close as 3 to 5 years down the line.
First of all, I think this is probably the most exciting time to be starting out one's career, maybe ever. I think like that 25-year-old in Mumbai can probably do more than any previous 25-year-old in history could. It's really amazing what you can do with a tool like this. I think the most important specific thing to study is just getting really good at using the new AI tools. I think learning is valuable for its own sake, and learning to learn is this like meta skill that will serve you throughout life. And whether you're learning, engineering, like computer engineering or biology or any other field like that, if you get good at learning things, you can learn new things quickly. But fluency with the tools is really important. When I was in college or in high school, it seemed to me that the obvious thing to do was learn to program. And I didn't know exactly what I was going to use that for, but there was this new frontier that seemed very high leverage and important to get good at. And right now, learning how to use AI tools is probably the most important specific hard skill to learn. And the difference between people who are really good at it, really AI native and think of everything in terms of those tools and don't is huge. I assumed that the people running these big tech companies really had it all figured out. And there were, adults in the room and somebody had a plan. And there were these people that were like way different than me that understood how to do things and, had this like, the companies were like running very well and there was like not much drama and everything was like, just everything was being handled by the adults. And now that I'm supposed to be the adult in the room, I will tell you, I think no one has a plan. No one really has it all working smoothly. Everyone, or at least I, am figuring out as they go. And, you have things you want to build and then things go wrong and you bet on the wrong people or the right people and, you get a technological breakthrough here or you don't there. And you just keep putting one foot in front of another and you put your head down and work and you have these like tactics that some of them become great strategies, some of them don't. You try something and the market reacts in some way or your competitors react in some way and you do something else. And now my conception is everybody is kind of figuring it out as they go. Everybody is like learning on the job.
You guys had a kid.
We did.
And how is that?
It is my favorite thing ever. But I mean, I know that like I have nothing that is not a cliche to say here. Mm-hmm. But it is the coolest, most amazing, most like emotionally overwhelming in the best ways and hard ways too. Experience everything everyone said about how great it is, how intense it is, how it's like a kind of love you didn't know you could feel. It's all true. I have nothing to add other than I strongly recommend it. And I think it's been really wonderful. It's amazing.
So I ponder on this a lot, Sam. Kids, why people have kids, and also questions like what happens to religion and marriage tomorrow. Can I ask you why you had a kid?
Like family has always been an incredibly important thing to me, and going like it felt like the most, and I didn't even know how much I underestimated what it was actually going to be like, but it felt like the most important and meaningful and fulfilling thing I could imagine doing, and it has so far, still early, exceeded all expectations.
Do you think it's the biological need to procreate?
I don't know. There's like this seems like a thing that is so deep it's difficult to put into words, but I feel confident. Like everyone I know, looking back on their life, who has had a great career and had a family, has either said, I'm so glad I took the time to have kids. That was one of the most important things I've ever done, the best things I've ever done. Or they've said that was by far the best thing I've ever done. That was way more important than any of the work I ever did. And I was like willing to take the leap of faith that would be true for me too. And it certainly seems like it will be. It's like, it is. And if it is just a biological hack, I don't care. I'm so happy.
Let me give you a scenario. What happens if a company X, let's say OpenAI, gets to the point where it is 50% of world GDP? Does society allow for that? Or?
I would bet not. I don't think that will happen. I think this will be a much more distributed thing. But if for some reason that did happen, I think society would say, we don't think so. Like, let's figure out something to do here. The analogy I like most for AI is the transistor, which was this really important scientific discovery that for a while looked like it was going to capture a ton of the value, and then turned out to be something that just gets built into like tons of products and services. And you don't really think about, the fact that you're using transistors all day long. It's just kind of in everything. And all these companies make incredible products and profits from it in this very distributed way. So I would guess that's what happens. And it's not like one company is ever half of global GDP. At one point I did worry that might happen, but I think that was a naive take. The main thing I would say is using AI itself does not create a defensible business. You see this with every technology boom where people were like, well, I'm a startup doing X, and because I'm using the latest technology trend, the normal rules of business don't apply to me. And that's never true. You've always gotta like parlay that advantage that comes from using the new technology into a durable business with real value that gets created. And it's kind of a race against the clock to do that. So, you can definitely build an amazing thing with AI, but then you have to go build a real defensible layer around it.
If I were to build a business on top of your model, let me give you the example of Amazon, for example. If I sold a certain kind of t-shirt and I sold a lot and Amazon had all the data, eventually Amazon probably started a white labeled brand which was very similar to mine and cannibalized my business almost. Should one worry that will happen here as well, because you're no longer just a model, but you're foraying into so many different businesses?
I'd come back to that example of the transistor. We are building this general purpose technology that you can integrate into something in a lot of ways. But we keep following our equivalent of Moore's law, and the general capability keeps going up. If you build a business that gets better, the business gets better when the model gets better, then you should keep doing well if we continue to make progress. If you build a business where when the model gets better, your business gets worse because the wrapper was too thin or whatever, then that's probably bad, in the same way that it's been bad in other technology revolutions. So there are clearly companies building on top of AI models that are creating huge value and very deep relationships with their customers for themselves. Cursor is like a recent example of a company that is just exploding in popularity. Look, the models are going to be much smarter than we are, but there's a lot of things that people care about that have nothing to do with intelligence. Maybe there can be like an AI podcast host that is much better than you at asking interesting questions and, kind of engaging whatever. And I personally don't think that AI podcast host is likely to be more popular than you. People really care about other humans. This is like very deep. People want to know a little bit about your life story, what got you here. They want to be able to like talk to other people about this like shared sense of who you are. And there's like some cultural and social value in that. We are obsessed with other people. And
why is that, Sam? Why do you think that is?
That, like, I think that's also like deep in our biology. Again, to the earlier comment, you don't fight things that are deep in biology. I think it makes a ton of sense of why we would evolve that way, but here we are. So, we're going to keep caring about real people. And even if the AI podcast host is much smarter than you, I think it's very unlikely he'll be more popular than you.
So in a perverse way, being stupider will be more novel than being smart.
I don't know if it's like stupider or smarter that has the novelty, but I think being a real person in a world of unlimited AI content will increase in value.
What is the difference between AGI and human intelligence today and tomorrow?
So like with GPT-5, you have something that is incredibly smart in a lot of domains at tasks that take, seconds to a few minutes. It's very superhuman at knowledge, at pattern recognition, at recall on these shorter term tasks. But in terms of figuring out what questions to ask or to work on something over a very long period of time, we are definitely not close to human performance. And an interesting example that one of our researchers gave me recently is if you look at our performance in math, a couple of years ago, we could solve math problems that would take like an expert human a few minutes to solve. Recently, we got gold level performance on the International Math Olympiad. Each of those problems takes about an hour and a half. So we've gone from a thinking horizon of a few minutes to an hour and a half. To prove an important new mathematical theorem maybe takes like 1,000 hours. And you can predict when we can do a 1,000-hour problem, but certainly in the world today, we cannot at all. And so that's like another dimension where AI can't do it.
What's in this AI realm for India as a country? What's the opportunity for us?
As I mentioned earlier, I think India may be our largest market in the world at some point in the not very distant future. The excitement, the embrace of AI in India, and the ability for Indian people to use AI to just sort of leapfrog into the future and invent a totally new and better way of doing things, and the economic benefits that come from that, the societal benefits. If there is one large society in the world that seems most enthusiastic to transform with AI right now, it's India, and the energy is incredible. I'm looking forward to coming soon. And it's really like quite amazing to watch. And I think the momentum is unmatched anywhere in the world.
I feel like the question really is, how do we transition from being a consumer to be a producer where we can build something that other people use outside of India?
That was what I mean, there's lots of things happening there, but that was the thing I meant. I think that's really happening already in a big way. The entrepreneurial energy around building with AI in India is quite amazing, and we hope to see much more of it.